welcome to the Bottom Line Live on this almost last day to file 1099s. There's a couple of days left if you're e-filing through Intuit QuickBooks. It's today though. So let me share this and then I'm going to start talking about bookkeeping. I know you guys are super surprised that bookkeeping would be my subject of choice of what I want to talk about. Let me share. Hi, Nano. Thanks for joining me. You had really good questions on the survey today, by the way. Okay, share to a group. We've got wealth dynamics. I know how to spell wealth. Okay, I think I'm shared everywhere I'm supposed to be shared. Okay, good. So I started making a list today. I've been in 1099s up to like, I said elbows and then I said neck. Now I'm like above my eyeballs. So I still have a whole bunch to file. I'm still waiting on some W-9s and stuff. But we're almost there. So I won't talk to you guys too much about 1099s. But I do want to tell you why you need bookkeeping. Sometimes people ask me that. Well, why do I need a bookkeeper? Why do I need bookkeeping? Why is that important? Or, things like that. I try not to get offended. I try not to go, because, I understand. It's a question of why, people don't totally know. So I am going to start telling you guys. I made a little list. I sent it to Jerry earlier. I probably could expand on it. But I'm going to start with 1099s just because, you all know it's my favorite subject right now. So we have some newer clients, that we're starting for 2022, and I reached out to them to ask if they wanted their 1099s filed, and they said, yeah, great idea. And I said, great, who and how much did you pay them? So that's kind of where I want to start, right? Think about this, guys. If you don't have records for your bookkeeping, you don't know what you paid anyone. You have to go through your bank account and count it up and see if you paid them anything through a credit card or some other account, right? So, that's just like a super basic example because that's what's in my head right now. In my ears and my eyes bleeding out of my eyeballs, 1099s. But that's something that, there's so many things that you need. But think about it, like there's so many tax things that you have to file, and if you don't know what your numbers are, you can't file them. You're late. You can't file your taxes on time. Vendors get mad at you, and again, if you don't file 1099s, you are liable for their self-employment tax. Hi, Sean. Thanks for joining us. So that's, just the first place I'm going to start with that. But even without that, right? Like you're a business owner, you started a company, you need to be able to manage your company. So number one reason, even without taxes and deadlines, number one reason that you need bookkeeping is because you need to know your numbers. And I'm not doing this webinar as like a sales webinar. I'm not saying, here's all the reasons you should hire me. They are all reasons you should hire me, but I want you to know why bookkeeping is important. Whether you do it yourself, whether you have a bookkeeper, whether, you need to learn how to do it, or whether you are like, I don't know, I started a company. Am I supposed to, the numbers? I'm not a numbers person, which I totally understand. Not everybody is. But number one reason that you need bookkeeping is you need to know your numbers. You have to be able to make financial decisions. How are you going to know if you have enough money to hire that next person? How are you going to know if you have enough money to buy those supplies? How are you going to know how much you can invest in your marketing? You need numbers. So I just wanted to say, number one rule or number one reason that you need bookkeeping is you have to know what your numbers are so you can make decisions. Even without the taxes, even without everything else. I know Jerry and I talked about this in a webinar that we did a few weeks ago. I look at my numbers probably every day. He looks at his at least once a week, maybe. I know he looks at it once a week because they do a financial plan, but they probably look at it even more often than that. You want to know what your income is, What did I do right to make more money? What did I do wrong that cost me money? You have to be able to look at all that. Okay, so the next reason that you need bookkeeping is for taxes. You have to be able to file your taxes. If you get to the end of the year and you go talk to a tax preparer, a CPA, they want to know your numbers. Okay, good. What was your income? What was your expenses? What do you have any loans? What's your balances, your bank account? And a lot of people go, oh, and they guess or they try. But let me tell you guys, this is another reason. But you're losing deductions when you do that because you forgot that you spent that money on a business expense. And we don't want to overpay the government. Jerry says, I had someone email me yesterday saying they made almost $500,000 on e-commerce, but then after he counted up everything he spent on ads and cogs, he was actually negative $30,000. Yeah, and with e-commerce that happens real easy. But if he would have been tracking his numbers throughout the year, like every week, every month, he would have known that, and he could have known that he needs to either spend less money on marketing, find more effective marketing, or at least not go negative, So you gotta know that. And for taxes, right? And Jerry will confirm how many people have come to us and said, okay, I'm ready to file taxes, and they don't have any numbers. You can't file taxes with no numbers. Sometimes people, I know that numbers are a hard area for people to confront, but sometimes people wait years. Do you know how many penalties and how much interest and how many fees you have to pay just because you didn't know your numbers, so you couldn't hand it to a CPA or a tax preparer to file it? Like, let's not give the IRS that much money. It's just unnecessary. We're all trying to figure out, how do we save the most money on taxes? Well, number one way to save the most money on taxes is file your taxes on time so you don't owe fees and penalties and interest. Let's keep that in mind. Okay. Next one. So you have a company and you want to get a business partner, or you want to get an investor, or you want to get a loan. What's the first thing they're going to ask you for? They're going to ask to see your P&L. They're going to ask to see your books. And not only that, they're going to want it to look professional. If you give them an Excel spreadsheet that, has a list of your expenses, they're going to say, can you go get it? Can you go give me a real P&L? P&L stands for profit and loss. So it's showing your profit and your loss. That's automatically what they're going to say. So if you consider yourself a business owner, a professional, you have to have professional bookkeeping. And I don't mean you have to hire a bookkeeper. I just mean you have to at least use a software. If you use an Excel spreadsheet, it's not going to be enough for the bank. It's going to be enough for your taxes. It's probably going to be enough even maybe for your planning purposes, but it's not going to be enough for loans, investors, and business partners to look at. So keep that in mind. Okay, Sean asked a question. What is the best way to keep track of numbers throughout the year on the day-to-day old school saving your receipts digitally? Is there an app? Okay, so there are many, many apps. Depending on your income depends on which software I'd recommend. If you're over 100,000, I go to QuickBooks online instantly. Even if you're under 100,000, but you've got like an actual business account and you're tracking stuff. Under that, there's Tax Hurdler. I know that Jerry recently announced that if you have a Mint Builder subscription, you get a free Tax Hurdler. So I was super stoked about that. Yes, I did used to live in California. I was super stoked about it because a lot of people ask me, and Hurdler, we looked at a lot of different softwares, and Hurdler looked pretty decent. So especially if you don't yet have, an official business account, you can use that to track your expenses and your numbers. There's a lot of people recently told me they were using, what's that other one? Tax Keeper. That one has been rather incomplete. It doesn't track your income. It doesn't really look organized. One thing I saw recently was somebody had a VA, a virtual assistant, and all the expenses came in that currency, and it looked like they paid a virtual assistant like $100,000 when they definitely didn't, but it came in the wrong currency. So I mean, hopefully Tax Hurdler can deal with currencies, but if it doesn't, when you're entering it in, make sure you correct the currency. Let's not have, or just pay people in dollars. Keep it simple. Yeah, so hopefully that answers your question, Sean. And I can definitely go into, Nano had a great question today, or a great point about, what is the blueprint for bookkeeping? Like, what does a business need to do in order to have their basics in for bookkeeping? And I'm going to do a webinar on that, and I'm going to probably even write down a blueprint because I tell people it all the time. So, I do want to go over that more later. Hurdler is definitely the most complete for the under 100,000 income, but it's going to be USD most likely. Yeah, hopefully they do the conversions, to USD, but if you paid someone in another currency, then you have to make sure you edit it to be the right currency. But yeah, so what's the first thing you should do? I'm kind of going off the topic here, but the first thing you should do when you open a business is you should open a bank account for the business. Now, it doesn't have to be a business account if you are still using your own social security number for the business. But you can open a separate personal account and just use that for business, and then just track that account, because that'll make your life so much easier if you don't have to go through every Uber, every gas station, every Starbucks, every single bill that you pay, or everything you pay online to see if it's business or personal. Just use one bank account for all your business transactions, and then use Hurdler until you're getting close to 100,000, then we'll upgrade you to QuickBooks. But that would be the way to go to answer that question. Okay, good. Why else do you need bookkeeping? I went through these first few reasons. Okay, payroll. So as soon as you elect to be taxed as an S Corp, you have to be on payroll. How are you going to know how much payroll you should pay yourself? You have to know what your profit is. How are you going to know what your profit is? You have to have bookkeeping. You have to know your numbers. You need to know how much you made, how much you spent, and what your profit is. And Jerry says bank accounts for some reason are not the easiest to open if it's business. So make sure you have your entity formation and management docs in order beforehand. Yes, I do agree, but some people don't have that yet, and you can just open a second personal bank account and use that for business until you have any entity documents that you need. Also, too, if you are an individual person that opened a business and you have an EIN, those business accounts are pretty easy to open. It starts getting complicated when you're a business entity that opened another business entity. Then they get weird about giving you bank accounts, as Jerry and I experienced. I never believed people before when they told me it took them months to open a bank account, but it took us months to open one bank account, so that sucks. Yeah, Jerry, I mentioned that. I'm very excited about it. I said stoked at least twice. That the new Mint Builder membership comes with a free Hurdler. I'm super excited about it. It's going to help so many people, and it's so inexpensive. It's such a great deal. You're already paying for Mint Builder anyways, or you're already paying for tax software anyways, or bookkeeping software. So now you get them together for free, or for the regular membership price, which I think is like $39 a month. Good. So that was the next reason. So payroll. In order to do payroll, you have to know what your profit is. In order to know what your profit is, you have to know what your numbers are. You can't make up a payroll amount out of your ass, I mean, you could be like, pay me $100,000 a month because that's what I deserve. But good luck trying to pay that to yourself if you don't have $100,000 a month. Let's see how long you can do that for. Okay. I think I pretty much gave you guys all of my main reasons. So for making decisions, financial planning, that's the first reason. For filing your taxes, that's the second reason. For loans, investors, business partners, you have to have books. For payroll, and then for 1099s, those are all reasons you have to have bookkeeping. Off the top of my head, as I told Jerry earlier, I'm bleeding 1099s, so I may not have the most creative talk tonight. But those are all important points. So if anybody has any questions for me, also, if you have any questions that you want me to talk about for half an hour in another webinar, I do free webinars. I know I charge a lot of money for consultations, but free webinars. So if you have something specific that you want to ask me about, feel free to ask, and if I can make a webinar out of it, because a lot of people ask me, then we can do that. Okay, I'm going to give you guys some examples and horror stories of what happens when people don't have bookkeeping, just for fun, because I've got 15 more minutes to talk about this. And write any questions that you have. But let me just really make this, a real thing. So last year, was it last year? I guess it was, a couple years ago now, in 2020, when the pandemic started and the government started handing out free money, right? PPP money, EIDL money. Do you know how many people could not take advantage of those loans because they didn't have bookkeeping? It was very sad. People were coming to me. Okay, let me finish my sentence and then I'm going to read what you wrote. People were coming to me with, almost boxes of receipts, which I don't have any space for, so I don't accept boxes of receipts. And like, oh, well, they said I can't get it unless I have a payroll. Okay, well, you need a payroll. Well, I don't have a payroll because I've never done any bookkeeping. Okay, so let's do your bookkeeping so we can figure out your payroll. And then you couldn't really go backwards very easily, so people just were getting disapproved for PPP loans, and they weren't able to claim the free money. I mean, there's no free lunch, but relatively free money that the government was handing out. So I just wanted to say that as one example on a horror story. Okay, I know Maya said you can do it yourself, and you can, but if you were going to a bank or an investor, they're going to ask for GAAP accounting, and if you did it yourself, you'll probably have to pay to have it all converted to GAAP, which is sometimes cheaper to have just paid a bookkeeper to do it from the get-go. Exactly. Yeah, a bank is going to want to see professional bookkeeping. You can try to do it yourself. If it's like in QuickBooks, it'll at least look professional, but you might want to have a professional bookkeeper at least review it, because I've definitely seen, there's different kinds of accounts, right? You've got your profit and loss report. I should do a whole webinar on the different kinds of reports, but you've got your profit and loss report, which has income and expenses. And then you've got different kinds of accounts like loans and credit cards and, assets, vehicles that you own. Exactly. And those are different types of accounts. They go on different reports. So I've seen people with bank accounts on their profit and loss, and I've seen people with vehicles on their profit and loss, and I've seen people with office expenses as an asset account. And not only do you use deductions, but they're going to ask you to fix your books. So thank you, Sean. I appreciate you too. I appreciate you being here. So you definitely want your books to be right. And if you're doing it yourself, have someone review it for the end of the year or something like that. GAAP, generally accepted accounting principles. Exactly. Generally accepted accounting. So there's specific ways you do it. And the government likes to change it a little bit every year, so you have to keep up with it as much as you can, which we try to do. Good, so let me tell you more horror stories of people not having bookkeeping. Let me see if I can think of good ones. Oh, how about, I know I don't want to talk about 1099s more, but okay, so there's people, even clients or new clients or non-clients, that ask for help on their 1099s. They don't have 1099s, they don't have any records, so they have to try to count up what they paid the person. They have to ask for a W-9 at the last minute, then they file it, and then the person comes back and says that it's wrong, and then they have to amend it. And that costs them way more money to, pay me or someone to figure it out and bug people for W-9s and file it, an amendment, than doing it right in the first place. Or here's another one. We have people who didn't do a payroll because they didn't know they were supposed to, or because they didn't have any bookkeeping, and then their CPA tells them, okay, well, just run a payroll by the end of the year. And then they have to fill out the forms and start the paperwork, and they don't get it done on time, and now we have to file an amendment, and they have to pay late fees, and penalties and interest and pay us to file an amendment when they could have just had bookkeeping and had their reports and done the payroll, throughout the year. Plus, here's what happens, guys. If you run one payroll at the end of the year, which you can do, but it's very painful, like on the cash flow. We have someone right now who started a new company, makes millions of dollars, had a huge profit, has to run a payroll of $250,000. Do you guys know what the payroll taxes are on $250,000? I mean, maybe he makes enough money so it doesn't bother him, but I hate sending out money for taxes for that much. I mean, think about it. So when you're an employee, what do you get? Like 25% taken out of your paycheck for taxes. So when you're a business owner, you get probably closer to 33% because of the employer and the employee taxes and all that. So if even someone who had to pay themselves a payroll of $100,000, they're going to pay out in taxes $33,000. Now, most of the time, guys, that money's not sitting in a bank. It's profit, but you spent it throughout the year on yourself personally, and all of a sudden you have to come up with $30,000, $40,000 for taxes by January 31st because you didn't do bookkeeping throughout the year. So I'm just saying horror stories now because these have all happened. Or, for instance, this was in 2020, and this was a particularly painful experience. He started bookkeeping, or he started payroll in one software. Then he switched to doing it internally for a few weeks because I guess he didn't pay a bill or something because it was 2020, so understandable. And then he switched to a different software, and then the bookkeeper that was working for him quit 2020, understandable, didn't keep any records. It took us 25 hours to recreate the payroll for that year because he didn't keep any records. But the good news is that us recreating the payroll saved him about $40,000 on payroll taxes because the payroll tax agencies assumed that he had the same payroll as the year before, so he owed them a bunch of money when he fired everybody in March of 2020, so he didn't owe that. But because he didn't keep records, he had to pay us 25 hours to recreate it, plus penalties, late, and all that. But we did still save him $45,000. So pros and cons. But in the end, basically, you want bookkeeping. Okay, let's read this question from Jerry. Another helpful thing a bookkeeper does is sometimes your tax return might show very little income because of tax planning strategies, even though your business was profitable. If you must show proof of income for a loan or a rental, etc., and you show them the tax return, it will likely be declined due to low income. But if you can show a certified GAAP P&L showing that you did have more income, it was just offset by tax planning, then you often can get approved. Yeah. Now, but Jerry, just so you know, I don't do certified GAAP P&Ls. So if they need it certified, they have to go to somebody who can certify it because I'm just a poor, lonely bookkeeper and I don't get any certification privileges. Not that I want them because that sounds like a lot of work. But yeah, so maybe your CPA would have to certify it. But I can at least give you a profit and loss that's official, might not be certified, and you can take that to the bank. Literally take it to the bank because they'll approve it based on your P&L. Sometimes even if they don't approve it based on your tax return, like Jerry was saying. Good. So does anybody have any questions? Those are my horror stories for you. Oh, you know what? Last horror story. How about this? We've all gone through this. How about you don't have any books? Yeah, exactly. Have Maya build it in a CPA certified. Yeah. I think they'll do that. So how about this? You don't have any bookkeeping, you don't have any records, and all of a sudden it's tax season and your CPA, your tax preparer, needs numbers right now. How many of us have done this? Spent 3 days with a migraine, looking through every single record, your bank accounts, your credit cards, trying to pull transactions out to make a list, to make numbers for your tax preparer. Yeah, that's the worst horror story there is. Who wants to do that? It's not fun. It's not fun at all. Just, give it to somebody else. Have a professional do it. You don't pull your own teeth out. So have a professional do your bookkeeping. Okay, good. Any other questions that we have about why bookkeeping is important, why you need it, why you literally can't live or breathe without bookkeeping? And if you have, then you'll know those are very painful breaths to take when you don't have numbers for your business. If Nano's still there, you always have such good questions, Nano, on your bookkeeping. All right. 1, have a bank account. 2, set up an LLC and payroll. 3, have books up to date with expenses and profits. What's next? Tax planning, probably. That's what I would do next. Yeah, but that's, I'm going to write a blueprint. It's going to be business bookkeeping blueprint. It's going to be the BBB. That's what it's going to be called. Did I get the flow right? Yeah, basically. I mean, I would say number 1 is make money, because if you don't have money, you don't have money even to do anything, right? So go have an idea, sell it, make money. Then when you have a little bit of money, go, or concurrently use a bank account for business expenses, even if it's a personal account. Then set up books, meaning like connect it to Hurdler or QuickBooks, depending on how much money it's going to be. And so you're tracking it from the beginning. The BBB, yeah. That's what we're going to call it, Jerry. And then, and then once you're making enough money, no, not the Better Business Bureau, the Better Blueprint for Bookkeeping for Businesses. Maybe it'll be the BBBB. So make money, have a bank account for the business money. Then once you're making over like $100,000 in income, $50,000 in profits, set up an LLC or set up, okay, you know what? I'm gonna have to write it down. But basically make money and have an account for that money that's separate at the same time. LLC it once you have money to pay for an LLC, but just not for tax purposes, just purely for legal protection. Once you're making over $100,000 or $50,000 in profit, then you elect to be taxed as an S corp. Then you set up payroll at the same time. A lot of these have to be done at the same time, Nano. So it's like they are kind of concurrent. But if you were saying like which day to do them, yeah, that's the relative order. Then, because you can't set up payroll unless you have books, right? So you can set up an LLC, but you need bookkeeping in order to know what your payroll is going to be. Okay, how do I find out more about Hurdler? I think Nano can tell you more about it, Sean. If you don't have a Mint Builder membership, then Nano can sign you up, and that comes with Hurdler. I don't know if they're like selling it direct, but I would get the Mint Builder membership. Okay, B4, because there's 4 Bs, and you should set that up. Should set up that bookkeeping before anything else. I like that. We're gonna call it B4. You heard it here first, folks. The business bookkeeping blueprint is going to be called the B4. All right. Okay, I think I've told you guys lots of horror stories. I think I've said everything there is to say right now about why you need bookkeeping. I am going to go back and file more 1099s right now. First, I'm going to take the lipstick off because you really don't need lipstick for 1099s. And if you have any questions, please ask me after the 31st, because until then I'm filing 1099s. But no, email me, send a message on Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram. My email is maya@solvencynow.com. My website is solvencynow.com. You can find me on Facebook, Maya Weinrab, or Solvency Now Bookkeeping. Instagram, Solvency Now Bookkeeping. LinkedIn, Solvency Now Bookkeeping. You can also send me a message on Facebook on here. You can comment. And if you think of any questions that you think we should do a webinar about, I'm taking ideas as always. We got some really good ideas today from the survey that I did, so I'm going to add those to my list. And there we go. At least 5 reasons why you should have bookkeeping and horror stories to go along with them of why you shouldn't not have bookkeeping. All right, thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next week, next Thursday on the Bottom Line Live about your favorite topic, bookkeeping. Bye, guys.